You've probably heard about the great Khans. There was Genghis Khan, Kublai Khan, Mongol Khan, and Batu Khan. They ruled over the Mongol Empire, at its height the largest contiguous land empire in the history of the world. But the Mongols had some incredibly influential and powerful women in their ranks. Women who ruled the empire themselves in their own right. Women who pulled strings, who were kingmakers, who manipulated rivalries and waged spectacular wars. Women who helped split apart the empire and women who reunited it after years of decay. Here are the stories of the queens you didn't know ruled the Mongol Empire. The woman who reunited the Mongols. By 1264, the Toyuid Civil War had torn the Mongol Empire into 4 separate khanates. Succession disputes between the descendants of Genghis Khan had turned into an all-out war, and the empire would never really recover. By the 1350s, the Yuan Khanate had fallen to the Ming dynasty. By the end of the 1300s, the Chagatai Khanate had pretty much disintegrated. The Il Khanate collapsed around the same time. The Golden Horde Khanate managed to hold itself together for a bit longer, but during the 1400s it was gradually chipped away until it was completely destroyed in 1502. Out of all this disintegration and collapse, one woman managed to put some of the pieces back together. Like if the Mongol Empire was Humpty Dumpty and she managed to at least pick up a few shards of shell and put them back together again. She even gave the powerful Ming dynasty a run for their money and forced them to add more bricks to their Great Wall. Mandukai Khatun might just be one of the greatest Mongols you've never heard of. She was born into the Ongut tribe, and when she was 16, she married Mongol Khan, who ruled northern Yuan from 1473 to 1479. Northern Yuan was a leftover piece of territory, north of modern-day Beijing, that remained in Mongol control after the collapse of the Yuan Khanate dynasty in the 1360s. Most of the tribes within northern Yuan were fighting each other. You had the Oirots in the west and a whole mess of different tribes to the east, including Mandukai's Onguns and Genghis Khan's old tribe, the Borjigins. In 1479, Mandul died under mysterious circumstances. There was no clear heir to succeed him. That was a problem that plagued the Mongols, so Mandukai stepped up to lead as queen. She brought Mandul's young nephew, Batumunk, out of hiding. Batumunk, who was from the Borjigin tribe, had royal blood that could be traced directly back to Genghis Khan. He was the great Khan's last living descendant, the last they knew of anyway. In her mind, he was the key to uniting the fractured empire. She raised him like a son, gave him an education, and taught him how to lead. Mandukai had a deep understanding of Mongolian traditions and the importance of legitimacy and power. She orchestrated an elaborate ceremony at a royal shrine kept by the Chakar, another powerful Mongolian clan, to formally install Batumunk as the ruler. He became Dayan Khan and was recognized as the legitimate heir and leader of the Mongols. When Dayan Khan turned 19, Mandukai married him. The mother and adopted son became husband and wife, king and queen. Dayan Khan might have been the heir to the throne, but it was clearly Mandukai who was pulling the strings. One of the major threats to Mandukai's rule came from the Oirots, a confederation of Mongol tribes that had been a dominant force in western Mongolia. The Oirots had been at odds with the Borjigin tribe and the other factions to the east, and were looking to expand their influence further into northern Yuan. Now, recognizing the need to defend her people and reestablish Mongol unity, Mandukai rallied her forces and led them into battle. The ensuing conflict between Mandukai's forces and the Oirots was a turning point in Mongol history. Despite being outnumbered and facing a powerful enemy, Mandukai and Dayan made their western rivals submit. The triumph didn't just establish her as a powerful ruler, it also restored the reputation of the Borjigin tribe and rejuvenated the sense of unity among the Mongols. Mandukai might have not been a Borjigin, but she knew the history and weight of the name. In terms of empire building and legacy, Mandukai propping up Dayan Khan made it seem like Genghis Khan himself had returned to unite the Mongolian steppe. Knocking on the door. Under Mandukai's leadership, the Mongols were more united than they had been in over 100 years. But in the south, the Ming dynasty was knocking on the door. Mandukai and Dayan Khan were able to suppress several of their attempts to invade northern Yuan, and by the 1480s, Mandukai's Mongol army was pushing into Ming territory, trying to get back what they lost over 100 years ago when the Yuan dynasty, founded by Kublai Khan, collapsed. The Mongol queen did such a good job bothering the Ming that they ended up fortifying and expanding their Great Wall in an attempt to hold the Mongols back. It was like a repeat of the 1200s, when Genghis was conquering the Xin, Jin, and Song dynasties. But nothing lasts forever. The Mongols were still a shell of their former world-conquering selves. Mandukai would pass away in 1510. Now, according to most sources, she died of natural causes. But there are some out there who think her death was a whole lot juicier. Legend has it that she was taken out by a Ming spy, possibly even a high-ranking Mongol general named Ismail, who turned double agent and began working for the Ming. The story of a woman rising to power, uniting an empire, and then being taken out by her own general who flipped sides is a compelling story. So compelling they made a movie out of it, a Mongolian movie titled Mandukai the Wise, which came out in 1989. I'm adding that to my watch list. We'll probably never get to disprove the legend because Mandukai's grave has been lost to history. But after her reign, Mongolia experienced a cultural renaissance. Architecture, sculpture, painting, silk weaving, the arts all flourished in the late 15th and early 16th centuries, thanks in large part to Mandukai the Wise. The Great Khatun of the Mongols. When Torregena Khan took over the empire from his father Genghis Khan, he expanded it into the largest land empire in history. But then in 1241 he died. We're not sure exactly how. Some say he was torn apart by a wolf while hunting. Yikes. Others say he had a bacchanalian night of drinking and died from that. Others say he died of natural causes. But it doesn't matter. He was gone. But unlike his father, who had designated him as his successor, Torregena never formally appointed an heir. This created a power vacuum and led to rivalries and succession battles so intense that the empire would eventually burst apart at the seams. Enter Torregena Khatun. She was Torregena's wife, and she took up the throne to become the sole empress of the entire Mongol Empire for 5 years, between 1241 and 1246. She got to work quickly. She basically purged all of Torregena's ministers and installed her own. Torregena appointed a former Persian captive, a woman named Fatima, as her closest advisor, her number 2. Fatima would play a big part in the political succession drama that was about to go down. So, in effect, you had 2 women leading the largest land empire in the history of the world. Torregena and Fatima had a lot to deal with. The Song dynasty in modern-day Southeast China was in the midst of being conquered by Torregena when Torregena took the throne, and she continued the Mongol push south. At first, she wanted peace with the Song, a Mongol version anyway, which often involved heavy tribute and utter submission, or else. She sent envoys to negotiate a ceasefire with the Song dynasty, but they were imprisoned. Now that was a bad move by the Song. In response, Torregena and the Mongols launched a military campaign into the Sichuan in 1242, and it was a rout. The Mongol forces pillaged and destroyed the region, and they did it without using many actual Mongol soldiers. The Mongols were great at getting other people to fight for them, and they played off rivalries and ethnic tensions. A big chunk of their fighting force in their campaign against the Song came from the kingdom of Dali, which had become a vassal state to the Song dynasty and had a lot of people who weren't very in tune with the Song regime. You see what I did there? Torregena also had been pushing west into the Seljuk territory in modern-day Turkey. Under Torregena's leadership, the Mongols finished what Torregena started. During the Battle of Qasida, they routed the Seljuk armies despite being outnumbered 3-1. After the victory, the Seljuk Sultanate of Rum and various other kingdoms in the area submitted and recognized Torregena's supreme leadership as head of the Mongols. Torregena now had international recognition of her status as the Great Khatun of the Mongol Empire. The Tiger Queens of the Silk Road. Genghis Khan may have been the worst prolific womanizer in all of history, but he also apparently thought that women could rule just as well as men, particularly his daughters, who became some of the most powerful queens in history. I'm talking about queens who were maybe the reason why the Mongol Empire could expand the way it did without collapsing under its own weight. What his daughter queens ended up doing as rulers might be some of the most influential trade deals in the history of the world. They were responsible for basically making the Silk Road. They diverted rivers to create oases along the route. They developed an economic trade system that helped move goods across Asia. They funded education programs and abolished taxes for doctors, priests, and teachers. They outlawed punishment. You could worship any religion you wanted. All of these important things, honestly, some of the best parts of the Mongol Empire that we forget about because of all the pillaging and war, were thanks in part to the daughters of Genghis Khan. Alakai, Kwojin, Tumelin, Altani, and Chekaigan. All of them were daughters of Genghis' first wife, Borte. Alake Beki might have been the most significant of the Tiger Queens. Alake's life started off with a bit of tragedy. When she was 16, she married into the Ongut nation, a powerful tribe of the Mongol Empire. 4 years later, her Ongut husband was killed. An enraged Genghis wanted to take out every single male Ongut as punishment for what happened. But Alake convinced him to only take out his anger on the actual killers, which is what ended up happening. The Ongut nation shared a border of the Jin Empire in modern-day China, which Genghis and the Mongols were very much interested in conquering. As queen of the Onguts, Alake was one of the main reasons that Genghis and the Mongols were able to do just that. Alake supplied her father's forces with loads of food, as well as horses that were bred in her own territories. It was an invaluable logistical support that helped sustain the Mongol army during Genghis Khan's campaigns against the Jin rule from 1211 to 1215 and 1217 to 1223. In recognition of her assistance and loyalty, Genghis gave his daughter freshly conquered territories in China, which she ruled under her own authority. Alake also set up a system of government based on traditional Mongol practices with the Ongut nation. She created a strong centralized government with efficient administration, as well as promoted intellectual and cultural exchange. It was a system that the entire empire would adopt. Without Alake, the empire might have collapsed before it became the largest contiguous land empire in history, because there would have been no way to govern it efficiently. Kublai might not have been able to found the Song dynasty. There would have been less of a Mongol presence in the Middle East and into Europe. The world as we know it would be fundamentally different now without Genghis' daughters leading the way. Battle for an empire. The rivalry between Sorgatani Beki and Ogul Kaimish was one of the most significant power struggles in world history. Just think about all the territory we're talking about here. The Mongol Empire was massive, and in a way, these two women were at the heart of deciding how it would be governed and who would do the governing. Both were trying to secure power and influence for their respective sons and help them become the next great Khan. Let's start with Sorgatani Beki. She was a wife of Talyui Khan and a member of the influential Karat tribe, who were Nestorian Christians. Of all the women we've been talking about, Sorgatani might have had the biggest impact on history. She might just be the most influential woman who's ever lived. No joke. No shade to Oprah. She was responsible for expanding trade throughout the Mongol Empire and was the driving force behind a lot of the intellectual and cultural exchange that opened up vast networks across Asia and Eastern Europe. She had sons who went on to become some of the most influential Mongol leaders in history. They included Kublai Khan, who would establish the Yuan dynasty in China, Mongke Khan, who would become the last great Khan of the United Mongol Empire, and Hulagu Khan, who founded the Ilkhanate in the Middle East. Then there's Ogul Kaimish. She was the principal wife of Gaya Khan, who had two lesser-known sons, Koja and Nachu. When Gaya the Great Khan died on his way to fight Batu, Ogul Kaimish briefly became the empress of the entire Mongol Empire. But Sorgatani was making moves. She had teamed up with Batu Khan in the Golden Horde Khanate and set up an alliance between him and her son, Manki. There's some speculation that the Mongol queen may even have had a hand in taking out Ogul's husband, Gayuk, as he was on his way to meet Batu in battle. Now, with Gayuk out of the picture and an alliance with Batu secured, Manki was crowned Great Khan in 1251. Ogul's sons tried their best to overthrow Manki, but they failed. Manki took revenge by cleaning house, and that included Ogul. She was arrested, punished, and then wrapped in cloth and thrown in a river. Sorgatani would pass away a year later in 1252, though her death was a bit less nasty, probably. She died of an unspecified illness after having, paradoxically, both grown the Mongol and sowed seeds that would lead to its downfall. Her son Manke would be the last great Khan of the United Mongol Empire. Civil war would erupt a few years later, succession disputes would continue, and gradual collapse became inevitable. Mongols' powerful queens show us just how influential women were in Mongol society. They played important roles domestically, politically, and economically, well before women's rights were a thing. Hey, thanks for watching. Let us know what you think in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more nutty history.